Other question, yes.
I know you mentioned the documentary about Jeanette and Nelson. I'm wondering if there's any info that you've held back, not in the book, that you know of, that maybe will come out later on?
The only thing I've held back are interviews with people who asked me to wait until they were gone. And this involves some intimate details. One woman who came up to me and said, look, I know Nelson Eddy wasn't sterile, and I'll tell you why. Okay, things like that. There are a few of those, and there are a few people who have verified parts of the Jeanette and Nelson story because they knew Nelson intimately, let's say, at that time. And they've talked about it, but they don't want me to talk about it now. However, I have videotaped all of them, and they're all there, and we have for the future. And that's why I'm always actively looking for anybody else who wants to come forward while they still can, and just let's get all the the history down and have it here so that it's all documented. So that's one of the main areas that and again, I didn't ask for it. These people would just call me or email me or write me and say, hey, I'm ill, I think I have a few months to live and I need to talk to you. So I would get on a plane and go find out what their story was.
All ashore that's going ashore. One more.
When did you start the Mac Eddy group? I mean, did you do it after you did the book or before you did? What made you?
Where have you been?
Okay. Well, okay. As I said, this whole thing started when I met Blossom, Jeanette's sister. And after some time, I wrote a book, a picture book, a coffee table book, just about Jeanette. When I was 19, it was published. And I was meanwhile gathering data to tell the full Jeanette and Nelson story. And in the meantime, there were fan clubs just for Nelson or fan clubs just for Jeanette, and they fought bitterly, and some of the Jeanette people hated Nelson and would have nothing to do with him, and vice versa. And I thought that was kind of counterproductive because it was as a team that they were best known, and also if they loved each other, then why if you were a fan of theirs, why wouldn't you at least grudgingly admit that the other one had a tiny bit of talent, So it actually wasn't my idea. I co-founded what became known as the Mac Eddy Club with someone else who walked out of a Jeanette MacDonald fan club meeting after the Nelson fans were told to shut up because they were clapping too loud at one of Nelson's songs, and the movie was stopped, and the Nelson fans were told they could be there if they wanted to, but they couldn't clap loudly for Nelson. So my friend walked out and she said, I've had it, I'm going to start a club for them. Would you like to help out, Sharon? And I said, sure. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Anyway, she ran the club for about 2 years, and I helped do all the writing and the editing. I did most of the work on the magazine. She wrote a couple of articles, but I did a lot of the work. She left the club, and then I took over. And I never dreamed that I was going to be doing this all my adult life, because I've never joined a fan club in my life, and I'm not, this club is not like a normal fan club where you just sit there and, yes, we all are perhaps gaga fans of Jeanette and Nelson's, but I felt that we've done a lot to research their lives, to get people to come forward, to put together all their radio shows and their home recordings and everything, and get them all gathered together and make them available for everyone. Try to really have the resources there for future generations, and that's really what I was looking at. So in that capacity, a lot of other people have contacted me with information, and that's how I didn't always go look for it. As I said before, the people came to me. It's a wonderful group of people. They've called me up and said, hey, you need to interview this person. I talked to this person. They met Nelson here, and they saw him with Jeanette in the hotel room. Here's their number. Call them up, And that's how it's gone all these years.
Wow. Yeah, but Sharon.
Yes.
I think all this chaos between all the clubs was deterred Nelson and Jeanette being able to be a part. Because when you look at Americana music, you never see them anymore. When you look at, all these things that PBS is having, They're not like Frank Sinatra. Look what they've done to him. Look what they've done to Elvis.
Well, part of it was because of their own spouses who were so determined to kill the story after they died that they buried everything. For a long time, Gene Raymond refused to sign off to have any of Jeanette's recordings be reissued after her death. Nelson's wife, I'm telling you, they threatened anyone with lawsuits, whether you wanted to put out a record, whether you wanted to write a book, whether you wanted to make a film, anything that you wanted to do, you were threatened. I mean, they were glad to have it over and done with. And it's very tragic because it did, in that 10-year period or so, when suddenly old Hollywood became big, they weren't around to go to their tribute dinners or get honorary Oscars. They died young, both of them. And their spouses killed every project that tried to be done, and it has done its damage, and that's why I have worked really hard, and some of the people in our group have worked very hard to get the word out, to get on the internet, to have, to talk to younger groups and young people and young singing students and show them, what is available. I mean, at this point in time, I spend a lot of time on Facebook and MySpace and all the young internet groups, and I talk to people who are starting out as vocal students in college. Hey, look at these films, check this out, because it has been buried to a great degree. You're correct about that. But we don't have to sit there and take it. Yes.
As much as you've done for Jeanette and Nelson, the one great thing you could do for them forever, they'd be on TV, they'd outdo Elvis and Frank Sinatra. If you write that book, and then they go through one of these big Gone with the Wind casting things, who will be Nelson? I have a suggestion for that.
Right.
Who will be Jeanette? That will become such a hot thing, whether people like them or not. It'll be international, and then they too will take their rightful place.
That's true, because the way I see it is that Romeo and Juliet, set in Hollywood of the 1930s, you don't have to be a fan of them. You don't have to know who they are. You don't have to care who they are. That's a story that's timeless. You can set Romeo and Juliet in any decade, in any country, in anywhere, and the fact that it's a true story of two people that wanted to get married, and the villain, Louis B. Mayer, wouldn't let them, and all the nightmare and disaster that occurred because of it, and it destroyed several lives and careers. That's a good story, and that's why I think that we can interest, Hollywood in doing the story, because it's a timeless thing. Doesn't matter if you know who they are.
Wow.
I think we need to wrap.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you hold this book, Rich, and if you do the closing, and we get a nice close-up of the book.
You've been listening mostly to somebody had something to say, Sharon Rich.
Isn't that a rarity in Washington?
I've interviewed, I just have to say, I've interviewed about 3,000 people the last 20 years, and this is the first time really I could have phoned my part in. Because you have something to say. And that's
I've been trying to get you two together for the
I
last 5 years.
I know, it's
There's
true.
no point to Ed other than that little thing I had in 1962 with them, but other than that, you're so full of information and present it in such an interesting way.
Thank you.
And with Darryl here, he's sort of an expert in that schmaltzy field that he does so well. And I want to thank you for having me on, Darryl, on the Darryl Winston Show, and for you, Sharon Rich, for coming here and adding to the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich Masabny, for making this a perfect day. There's the lady, Sharon Rich. Here's the book, Sweethearts. Try to find a copy. It's in its second printing.
Yeah. Can we say who's the...
you can get it on. You could get it on
publisher?
Amazon. It's Bell Harbor Press, but you can get it on Amazon.com. You can go to NelsonEddy.com or JeanetteMacDonald.com and get it also.
Very good. Thanks so much.
That's a wrap.